Boolean operators are operators that evaluate to true or false. So the simplest Boolean operator is just true. I mean, if I run this thing, I obviously get true. And of course I can run false and I get false. I know that seems very silly, but I can actually use that Boolean operator inside of a control statement, like, for example, inside of an if statement. I could say if true, do something. For example, I could say if true, say hello, and it says hello. I know that seems like a silly example, but I can use any Boolean operator inside of an if statement. I could say if false, say hello. Now, of course, it won't do anything because the if condition is false. Let's try some other Boolean operators. Again, anything in Snap, anything that has these little pointy ends is a Boolean operator. It will evaluate to true or false. So I could just type in some numbers here. I could say if 2 is less than 4, say hello. Now if I run this, that is true, and it says hello. I actually can just run this on its own, and you can see that, in fact, it says true. 2 is less than 4. If I reverse this greater than less than sign, now it says 2 greater than 4. This is false, of course. And if I stick it back into the if statement, now this say hello statement won't run. So there are a bunch of other Boolean operators, less than, equal to, greater than. I could say is 2 equal to 4, and so forth. I can also use ands and ors. Let's try ands and ors. I could say if 2 is greater than 4, and two is greater than 1, say hello. So this part of the statement is true. This part of the statement is false. And if I run it, nothing happens. And actually, if I pull it out of here and run it, you can see that it's false. In order for an and statement to be true, both parts must be true. I could do the same thing for an or, and actually if I just hit the drop down, you can see I can change the and to an or. If I run this, it in fact is true because one part of it is true. This part is false, this part is true. As long as one or the other part is true, or both parts are true, this will evaluate to true. It seems a little weird just typing in numbers. Of course, typically you wouldn't just see numbers in here. Typically you would see variables. So I would say something like, I'd have a script variable, perhaps x and y. I can make 2 variables. Here are my 2 variables, x and y, and perhaps I will set them to something. Set x to 0. I will set y to something else, 4, and now I could say something like, oops, I pasted it in the wrong place. I could say something like, if x is greater than 4, or x or y is greater than x, for example. Run this, say hello for 2 seconds, and we can run this and see what happens. It says hello, because although x is not greater than 4, y is greater than x, so this part is true, so the whole thing evaluates to true. So hopefully it makes sense how to put together these or statements or and statements. There are other Boolean operators in Snap. Anything, as I said, anything with these little pointy ends are a Boolean operator. They will evaluate to true or false. There are some in the Sensing tab. You can ask, is a sprite touching something? That will evaluate to true or false. Is it touching a particular color? So actually, if I run this, it says false because this particular sprite is not touching this color blue. But you can certainly do that to test for different conditions. There are other, other operators, I believe, underneath variables. Yes, there are some other ones. And we'll get to that later, but don't have to worry about that too much now. One other Boolean operator which is worth mentioning is the not. So, oops, let's grab this not here. The not gives you the opposite of whatever you originally had. So this particular Boolean statement is true, it says hello. If I stick this into the not, I will end up with the opposite of this. So the original statement was true, this will now be false, and when I run it, nothing happens because this condition is not satisfied, and actually again I can run this on its own and you can see that it evaluates to false. So not gives you the opposite of whatever condition you started from. Anyway, I hope that makes some sense, and it's your turn to play around with Boolean operators.